Did you know that Christmas actually is spooky season 2.0? Yeah. That used to be something that people did all the time back before you had all the internet and Instagram and Twitter. People used to sit around a fireplace. And let me tell you, there wasn't a whole lot of entertainment back in those days, not compared to what we have today. So they would inevitably tell ghost stories at Christmas. And that, my friends, is what we're going to do today. Well, hello, my spooky friends. Yeah, it's ghost story time, and you see Scully is back here with the gingerbread man, and I think he, Scully keeps coming forward, like he looks like he's about to fall off. Are you okay, Scully? Like I think he's afraid that Mr. Ginger is going to steal the show. Scully, you will always be my co-host, okay? He's not going to take your job. I hope you all are having a wonderful holiday season and that you are not too stressed out. We're going to be talking about some ghost stories. Let me just apologize for not having an upload on Thursday. I am going to have to reshoot now all of the things that I did that was supposed to be released on Thursday. But yeah, it was I don't know. I guess the file was corrupted. The sound was so bad. I just gave up. I gave up and I couldn't do it in time. I've got to get myself together. Anyway, you came here for ghost stories, and I'm going to tell them. I want to start with a comment that one of you sent to me that very much intrigued me. Michelle Walburn says, when people are going to die, they get very bright. If someone is going to die that I haven't seen recently, I'll get an incredible urge to visit them for weeks before they die. That one took me a while to catch on to. Now, I haven't had that experience myself. I don't see them as getting brighter. Sometimes I know, but yeah, that would be a little bit hard to catch on to. And let me just say this holidays can be very rough on some people. So, look, any time of year, if someone is on your mind and you can't stop thinking about them or they just keep coming back time after time, give them a call, send them a text, take them to lunch, do something because that is the way we know that somebody really needs some encouragement, support, friendship, whatever. But I thought that was a very interesting comment. We're going to start with some premonitions first, and then we're going to move on to some glitches in the Matrix, maybe a ghost story here and there. It's all paranormal, and I love the spooky, don't you? Oh, and I did want to include this one because I thought it was so funny. Roberta says, when things go missing, many people say it's a ghost or an angel. My sister used to say aliens took it. They beamed it up, studied it, then put it back before they thought we noticed. So anytime she'd lose her keys, she'd just say, the aliens have them. They'll give it back soon. And that is what I'm going to start using every time I misplace something or when it legit disappears. Because, that has happened around here a whole lot. So, yeah, absolutely. The aliens just have them. That's what it is. They'll give them back. Okay, this is a premonition that comes to us from Night Owl. At the end of September, I was doing laundry in the basement. I didn't have the main light on. When I started up the steps, the light switch flipped on and the light came on. I watched it without touching it. I knew I was going to get news, and a few days later, something happened that was not good. Now, I kind of assumed from the very beginning of that Night Owl that it was not going to be good news just based on the way you described it. And there are things that I know sometimes it's a dream. Most of the time with me, I have a physical thing happen that gives me a heads up. And we're going to talk a lot about how a heads up, even if it's bad news, I think there's a purpose in that. So let's go on with some more stories and you'll see what I'm talking about. So Night Owl goes on to say, I had something happen 2 days ago that was spooky. A hair scrunchie that was in a purse in a car ended up in my bag. that I had inside with me. It was laying on top of my things and no one had bothered it. A friend told me that her son lost her ring in a house they had moved from 5 years after it happened. Well, one evening she was alone, and that very ring appeared in her seat after she had gotten up to do something. It freaked her out and me as well. Well, I guess so. After 5 years, that is crazy. We had another appliance. Remember, it was 4 years, I think, until that one came back. But yeah, it's crazy how that works. Is it a glitch in the matrix? Is it a trickster ghost or somebody who steals it? What is it? Especially when a long period of time goes by and you absolutely know it could not have been there. So, how did it get there? Sue Smith says, I didn't notice that my wedding ring was missing the large center diamond. It was there earlier in the day. For my work, I was presenting to a group of jewelers. My work has nothing to do with jewelry. I was presenting a food product. In the middle of my presentation, a group noticed my diamond was missing from my ring. The whole presentation shifted to my ring. One lady said it could be an omen. And I felt that too. 3 years later, we divorced. I have not made a presentation to jewelers in my 15 years with my company, only on the day my diamond went missing. Yeah, you really have to think that it was an omen, kind of, sort of. It was 3 years, but still, what a freaky feeling. And the thing is, sometimes we lose things and we don't have that gut feeling. We don't feel like it's an omen or anything like that. It's just, it is what it is. You just lose something. But sometimes something is just not right. And that's when you know you might be looking at something like an omen. Now, let me put out a trigger warning here because this does have to do with the loss of a child. So, if this would trigger you, just skip on to the next story, okay? Nancy D says, when my husband and I were having our first baby, I began having problems from 7 months on, bled for apparently no reason, which stopped by the time I got to the hospital. Polyhydramnios, in which I had to travel from South New Jersey to Philadelphia via bus every 2 weeks to get drained 1,200 cc's of fluid. If y'all don't know, that's a lot of fluid. Even with the technology in 1981, they couldn't say anything specifically that was wrong. The amniocentesis was negative. My husband bought me a card with a rosebud on it, and on the inside he wrote, Our baby is the bud that didn't open. I knew then that she was going to die and began crying. When he asked what was wrong, I told him, You didn't end it with yet, as if the bud hasn't opened yet. She was born via C section with multiple inward anomalies, yet was perfect on the outside. She died in the hospital 5 days later. We finally got to hold our Victoria Eileen after she had passed. I know it's been a long time, but that loss, I know, is still a loss, and I am so very sorry. But yeah, see, this is where I think in cases like this that having a little bit of a heads up, even though you don't want the full knowledge, it's like you already have this inner warning of what's going to happen. And in my opinion, even though it is a feeling of dread, it's not a shock to your system, okay, as it would be if this hadn't happened, if you hadn't had this premonition. So I'm going to say, yeah, I think that it was maybe a blessing in disguise just to give you that little bit of a heads up. Bonnie Brown says, I had something happen today at 12:05 p.m. My husband and my grandkids left to go to Walmart. They hadn't been gone but a couple of minutes, and all of a sudden I heard a crash in the kitchen. I went in the kitchen and the clock had fallen off the wall. I was like, what in the world caused that? There have been some strange things going on the past month. I don't know what it is though. Okay, first, Bonnie, I'm going to want to hear about the rest of the stuff going on in your house. So let me know. Sometimes things just do fall off the wall for normal reasons, but really not that often. And I've had tons of things fall off the wall, but usually it is, again, an omen, a premonition, somebody's picture. I had one time, I was dating this guy and I thought everything was great. And this is back in the day, y'all. This is kind of silly, but I had cross stitched a little circle thing and I had cross stitched his name on it. I had hung that little circle thing from my rear view mirror. And so when I would drive down the road, I would see his name. And it was so weird. I was just going down the road, nothing, didn't hit a bump, anything like that. All of a sudden, it just fell. The whole thing, the string literally broke in half, and it was a thick string. There's literally no reason it should have fallen. But when it did, I got this really sick, sinking feeling that we were going to break up. And I called him later that day and I told him what happened, and he's like, "Oh," he just laughed it off. He thought I was nuts, but I was still unsettled. And I think it was probably within 2 or 3 weeks. Yes, we did break up. We had been kind of on and off, and that was the last time. And you know what? I knew it. I just knew it. So, things falling, pay attention to what it is, pay attention to the time, if it's a clock, something like that. Just maybe keep a little record and see if anything shows a pattern. Those are just my thoughts. Karen Smith says, "When you told the story about your wedding band, it reminded me of something that happened to me decades ago." The background: my then husband and I lived in a city and we owned a 100+ acre farm. Wow, that's big. About 75 miles away. We spent most weekends there and we both enjoyed it. The event: I had a charm bracelet that was very full of charms, which I wore quite often. We were out shopping one day, and while I was trying on a coat, one of the charms, which was a large silver hay barn, there's Sachi, caught on the sleeve and fell to the ground. I had never lost a charm before, and as I picked it up, I said out loud, "I wonder if this means I'm going to lose the farm." That was such a weird thing to say, and I had no idea why I said it. I had absolutely no reason to think anything like that. My then husband poo pooed my comment and said, "That is ridiculous." 3 months later, I learned that he and my best friend of 20 plus years, oh my God, were having an affair, and I kicked them both to the curb. Well, you go, girl. Jeez, I can't even. I wasn't able to maintain the farm by myself, so I gave it to him in the divorce settlement. So I did lose the farm, just as my charm bracelet and my subconscious had showed me. I don't know how these unusual things work, but I do believe that we should definitely pay attention when they happen to us. Thank you for sharing such thought provoking true stories with everyone. Have a great weekend. You too. I don't know how I would have kept it together if it was my best friend of 20 plus years and my husband. Oh, ugh. You are so much better off. Let those losers have each other. But yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Something weird. Like you said, does this mean I'm going to lose the farm? Like you wouldn't even be thinking that. You see the charm fall, but that is, not a really normal response. The normal response would be, "Oh, gosh, I'm going to have to take this to the jeweler and get it fixed." Not, "Am I going to lose the farm?" Because your subconscious already knew. Because I feel like we as females, we know. We know when something's not right in our relationships. We are good detectives, okay? And it's probably you just didn't want to believe that. But there is your subconscious coming right out of your mouth. And just that little bit is probably what made you open your mind more to see what was going on around you. I'm just guessing, but I know it would have for me. Okay, I swiped this story off of another group, so I cannot tell you who I got it from. I guess it's a private group, but I loved this story so much that I wanted to share it. This happened to me about 10 years ago. A friend and I were driving back to her house from another friend's house. We got off her exit and were driving around for 5 minutes. Right as we were going to turn onto her street, all of a sudden, we were exiting the freeway again. We were both so confused and we were both so weirded out by it. At the time, we just kind of laughed and said we went through a time warp, but we never brought it up again since it was just a strange feeling and many people wouldn't have believed us. Okay, so you not only get off the exit, but you're driving around for 5 minutes, about to turn down the street, and then you're back on the freeway taking the exit. That is crazy. That is definitely a glitch in the matrix. And I understand why most people wouldn't believe it, but I'm going to tell you, that's the difference, I guess, on the way that people respond because me, I would, uncomfortable or not, I would have been talking about it all the time. What just happened? I would have called her up. I would have texted her. I would have said it a bunch of times. Try to investigate. What is this? How did that happen? But that's just me. Yeah, some things are just so weird and uncomfortable that some people don't talk about them again. I loved that story. Okay, this one I can share. It is by Sherry Stiers. My stepdaughter and I recently, in the last month or two, had a glitch in the matrix situation. We were on the way to school and there was a plane that was not moving. We watched it for several minutes until we were too far away to see it. On my way home, it was gone. I picked up my stepdaughter from school and one of her friends, and their parents had also seen the same plane not moving in the sky. Now, at first you might think the plane didn't seem to be moving because, just the laws of physics, the way that you're going a direction and the car and the plane, they can almost seem like they're standing still. Not really, not big jets, but I've seen smaller aircraft look almost like they weren't moving because we were at the speed. But I want to tell you this, and I don't know where I saw it. I think it was in another country, but several people had a video of the same thing. And I saw it, I don't know if it was on YouTube, TikTok, I don't know, somewhere. And they were literally still videoing this, the plane not moving in the sky for, I don't know, it was more than a few seconds. It was like at least 15, 20 seconds or more. And then all of a sudden, the plane starts moving. It was like a glitch. It was like everything stopped and froze. Like when when your computer freezes up. It was crazy, but many people took a video because it was from different angles of that very same thing. So I totally believe you. Thanks for sharing. Okay, and Osaka Rose says, Peggy's story was almost like mine. I was driving down a major highway and saw a car on the median, which was concrete. It looked like it had broken down and was sitting there. I was in the lane next to the median, and there were two other lanes on our side of the highway. Well, I'm going 50 miles per hour with a car right next to me on the right and a solid lane of cars next to it in the slow lane. Okay, I think I lost a few lines of this, but basically, the people in the lane next to me looked as stunned as I felt. Either God changed the laws of physics or there was a glitch in the matrix. Either way, I should have been dead on impact. Instead, I have spent many years wondering exactly what happened that day. I don't know what happened to the middle part, but basically, yeah, there was a car in the lane there, and she had no choice, kind of like the story that I told you. You're either gonna hit it because you can't go into another lane. There's like a concrete median, and you can't go to the left, you can't go to the right, and so what happens? It's like you just pass through it. So, yeah, it is a strange, freaky thing that you can't explain, but in that moment, you're just so glad to be alive, even if you don't know how it happened. Thank you so much for sharing that story. Now, this one comes from Melissa B. My husband and I had a glitch in the Matrix story. We were driving a few years ago and crossed a railroad track. Right as that happened, the industrial landscape around us changed to be long, golden, grassy farmland, and the paved road became a gravel country road. To the left, we saw a maroon 1940s sedan pulled towards the ditch at an angle. The trunk was popped, and a man dressed in 1940s clothing glared at us. There were no sounds. It was almost like a film splice of the area 80 years ago. The whole encounter lasted maybe 5 seconds. I looked over at my husband, who was driving. Unsure what to say, I asked, "Did you feel that?" He said he did, and I asked him to recount what he had just experienced. He recalled all of the same details: the old maroon car, the menacing looking man, the trunk being popped, the changed landscape. I couldn't believe it. I've had a lot of paranormal experiences in my life, but this is always the one I'm the most hesitant to tell, mostly because it just doesn't make any sense. It's kind of a glitch in the matrix mixed with a time slip, based what I f- based on what I found online. Wow, that really is a crazy story. So, all of a sudden, like the whole industrial, like all of the scenery changes, and you see this guy with the trunk popped open, glaring at you, and he looks like maybe 1940s. Yeah, what was in that trunk? I want to know if something really significant happened there. So, I wanted to include a few comments on this that you made on this story. Nancy D said, "Great story. Wonder if there was any significance to it, like someone who was unalived and this was the perp and he had the victim in the trunk." Nancy, that is exactly the way I think. Maybe you should research it. It could be a slip in time or someone reaching out for an unsolved issue. So then Melissa answers her and says, "Honestly, I thought that too. I even went through old murder stories from the time, but never found anything specifically on that road. I still wonder though." As do I. And if it was an unsolved case, then you wouldn't find anything in the papers. Um, and especially if it wasn't a local person. Here's the thing, and the reason, besides the fact that I have a true crime channel, the reason that I think this is because when we see things like this, some people say it's like recordings, it's like watching a movie, and it is kind of. It's like things that replay over and over, but usually it is trauma based. So if you are seeing something like this and this guy is looking at you and glaring, I would think that he is doing something that he should not have be doing. Because why else would somebody just glare at you unless they were interrupted? So, yeah, you may never know, but that is a crazy story. Thank you so much for sharing that one. I love it. And that was the last story for today. It's Scully's bedtime, and I have to get this out for y'all. Thank you so much for being understanding on my missed video. Again, I want to hear your Christmas stories. Do you have any Christmas stories? Put it in the comments. Email me at avelincottage@gmail. I hope you have a great rest of the weekend. I hope we'll have a great rest of the weekend. I'm just going to leave that in. I'm not even going to cut it out. Whatever. Y'all just stay spooky. Bye bye.